Okay, well, let's get started. Thank you, all of you, for your patience just while we were waiting for other people to join. So, good afternoon and a huge welcome to today's webinar with Greg Gillespie, MSc of Legal Connect, who will discuss how process serving works and why it's necessary so that participants can ensure effective service has been achieved, regardless of what papers need to be served. As you may know, my name is David. I'm the founder of DG Legal. And if you've attended our webinars before, you will know that the slides from today's presentation will be sent over tomorrow. And a recording of the webinar will be available for at least 3 months, if not longer. So if we do run over and you need to leave, you'll be able to watch the rest at another time. We are in webinar mode, so we can't see or hear any of you. So please use the Q&A function so that Greg can answer your question. Now, I know there's two different methods of asking questions. There's the Q&A and the chat. We are going to aim to answer the Q&As 10 minutes before the end of the webinar. I will prioritize using the Q&A rather than the chat. So if you can, please use the Q&A function. By way of a brief introduction, Greg is the founder of Legal Connect. He has an extensive background in litigation support and high-profile cases. For instance, his evidence has been used by the Maltese government as part of prosecutions of senior politicians on charges of corruption, etc. His work has also been used by the FBI and the US Department of Justice as part of an investigation into allegations of fraud, and so on and so forth. I mean, his experience is absolutely legendary. His work with the FBI makes me feel very, very scared, so I'm going to be on my very best behavior. But without further ado, over to you, Greg.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you very much, DG Legal, for inviting me and asking me to do this. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Just on a side note, we were discussing just before the webinar started, many years ago, I used to be a teacher and I don't do very much teaching now. So any opportunity I get to do things like this, I always really look forward to. It's something I really enjoy doing. This subject, to be perfectly honest, is pretty dry, but I will do my very best to make it as interesting and as engaging as I possibly can. As David said, questions at the end, but I will leave you my contact details. You can contact me anytime to ask any queries about anything. I'm not precious about that, so you can get in touch. Okay, so just very quickly, and then let's crack on. So as we said, my name's Greg. We're here for 60 minutes. Questions, please ask away, which we'll do at the end. Any support after this, contact me. You're more than welcome to. And if people want certificates for their CPD, we do have some, so we can get those in the post or send you a digital copy. It's going to take about an hour. I'm going to finish at about 10 to, so we've got times for those questions. So this is what we're going to cover today. So we're going to look at what is process serving. I think process serving is a bit of an archaic aspect of the English and Welsh legal system. My experience of it when I first got involved was that it was based on paper, emails, the post. I thought it was totally inefficient and pretty rubbish, quite frankly. I had loads of problems with it, which is why I founded Legal Connect. And I'll talk about what we do later on, but we're going to talk about what is process serving, who are process servers, why it's necessary, because we always get asked, why don't you just use the post? What's wrong with the Royal Mail? What papers can we serve? We're also going to look at where papers can't be served. There are certain places in the country who are not allowed to serve papers. We'll look at the GDPR aspect. We'll look at how this works under legal aid. I find that the legal aid aspect is, again, really misunderstood. It doesn't impact any of this. It's just about costing, which we'll cover. I will talk, majority of the talk will be about how papers are served, because that is the key part of this. And this term of effective service, we have to validate that service has been affected. So you'll hear me use this term quite a lot. We'll talk about how you can instruct a process server. There's lots of ways of doing that. I'll also outline the responsibilities between yourselves as the lawyers, as the professionals, and us, because there are times when problems occur, and it's usually from a lack of clarity as to who's responsible for what. So I'll go through exactly what that is. And I'll go through some commonly asked questions, and then at the end, we'll go through any questions that you guys may have. So as a definition of what is process serving, it's the act of delivering legal documents to a person or organisation as part of a legal process. Now, there's three things we need to consider with this. One is that it's got to ensure that the legal rights of all parties are upheld. It guarantees that people are informed of legal actions which may affect them, and it gives people the opportunity to respond to legal action. So, and I do refer to this later on, but there's a legal process that we have to follow. But I would also argue that there's a moral process, because even if, you know, the person, and we've had some really interesting cases of people that we've had to serve on who, you know, aren't always the most pleasant, to be honest about it. But there is a moral argument to say that if they're going to be involved in some kind of litigation, they have every right to know exactly what is going on, to be given as much notice as possible, and have the right to defend themselves or whatever it may be. In the same way, there's a moral argument for the other side who are instructing for the papers to be served. It is in their interest that the process is done properly to ensure that what they want, what their outcome is they hope it's going to be, is allowed to happen. So outside of the legal black and white stuff, I do take a very moral view on this, and we take certain steps to almost enhance what we're doing because of that moral position. But really, process serving, if you drilled it down to its core, you would argue that it is an act that's conducted by an independent third party who follows a correct process. You've got to have someone who is not associated with whatever the dispute is or the litigation is, who can just honestly say, I've got no vested interest in this, no conflicts of interest. I served these papers to this person, and this is how I did it. That is, in essence, what it is. When you start to look at, well, who are process servers? It's a bit of a strange industry, because you get people from all backgrounds. You'll get a lot of retired police officers that are kind of topping up their pension. You'll get a lot of people who are retired looking for a bit of extra cash. You get private investigators. I mean, I'm doing another talk on October 9th about the use of the private investigators in the legal industry. But a lot of PIs are process servers, so they don't actually investigate anything. Process serving falls under that umbrella of private investigation, as well as bailiffs, etc., etc. The issue, though, the real risk, is that it is an unlicensed part of the industry. It's unregulated. There's no sort of oversight or authority, as there were. And there are examples of very questionable activities, organizations, and ethics. I mean, when I first got involved in this industry some years ago, I had a problem very early on with someone that said they'd done something they hadn't. And it was like, well, the whole industry is based on a very inefficient process, but it's based on trust. And it can be very difficult in terms of making sure you get someone who is responsible and does the proper job. We put in place a process. So we have guys that serve for us all over the country. We have a process of who we take on in certain areas, and we are actually in the process of creating our own training course, so that for certain areas where there are we don't have coverage, we can just go in there and train them exactly on what we want to do. So it's kind of our mission with Legal Connect is to be the best litigation support organisation in the country that's digital, on top of everything, and we try and be the best at what we do, which I'll go through in a bit more detail later on. But why is it necessary? Well, it's necessary because it's part of a legal process. It has to happen to enable a legal process to occur. The classic question is, well, why don't you just put it in the post? Which you could do, the problem with that, though, of course, is that one, it can be lost. I mean, first of all, I've just moved flat, and where I now live on a really sort of weird cul-de-sac where I'm hidden around the corner, and I've had posts go missing because they just can't find it. Even if it is delivered and tracked and all the rest of it, it can be ignored, and people can deny, well, I never arrived, didn't see it, and there's no verification other than maybe a tracking number as to whether it really has been served. So you can't really rely on it. And that's why you need the independent third party who will put their reputation on the line, and they are at risk if they don't do it properly, which we'll talk about, to make sure that effective service has occurred. They can validate exactly what they've done, why they've done it, when they did it, how they did it. They can document it to prove that documents have been received by someone or have been delivered to a certain place. And they are liable. They will find themselves in serious, serious trouble in lots of capacities if they don't do it properly or they try and cut corners. And there's a few case studies that we're going to have a look at. So if we look at how papers are served, this is just a really basic sort of model. As a general rule, we're either serving on a person or a company. We serve on a person, usually it'll be their residential location. You can serve them at work, but we'll come to that in a minute. We will have physical visits. An agent will go out, knock on the door. There'll be other forms of communication, which we'll go through. And that will lead us to say, we have done X, Y, and Z at this known address for this known subject. Here's the evidence of that. This is what we consider as being effective service. So we need to apply common sense, basically. And as an investigator, primarily, for us, it's about documenting that audit trail. This is what we did at this time, at this date, in this location, for this person. Here it is. Here's the evidence. There's no ambiguity. The then question is, well, what constitutes effective service? Well, first of all, having the right location, which we will talk about in a moment. So that's usually home if it's a person. It can be done at work, but we need to identify the subject. And we identify the subject in various ways. One is by having data that says that this is where they live or this is where they work. Sometimes it's about us having information like the picture of the subject to identify who they are. It's about once we knock on the door and they say, hello, are you Mr. Smith? Yes, I'm Mr. Smith. Oh, hi, Mr. Smith. Right, we validated it that way. And sometimes the subject will be asked to provide information to validate that they are who they say they are. And there are some funny stories on that. If I've got time, I'll go through. But the handing over of documents, it's a bit of a myth. I mean, you see it in movies and on Netflix where there's a big courtroom drama in America normally. And, there's a bloke walking down the street and he goes up to the subject and they go, oh, are you Mr. Smith? He goes, yeah, I am. And he gets the papers and he throws them. He says, you served. Doesn't quite work like that here. There's a bit more to it than just doing that. We may well have numerous visits to a particular location. We may well have numerous communications or attempts to communicate with that particular individual, not just through visits. It may be that we send them letters, or we put notes through the post, through their letterbox. We may call them or text them. We may email them. We need to demonstrate that we've gone above and beyond to try and communicate with this individual and get those papers in their hand. But we try and apply a common sense approach. If something went wrong and we were called in to court to be questioned, what did you do? We want to be able to document absolutely everything and prove beyond reasonable doubt that we made numerous efforts to communicate. And even if the person is obstructive, which is another bit we'll come to in a moment, we can show you, look, we've acted in good faith. This is the evidence, and this is everything that you need to know, and we can prove it. And there's a few case studies that I'll show you, and we're going to go through now. So, as a general, it's just a general overview. We will get an instruction. An agent will go to the home for the first visit, and let's just say that particular person isn't in. Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll call the mobile if we've got their mobile number, or we'll call their landline if we've got their landline number, and we'll leave a message or hope that they answer. If they do answer, we'll tell them who we are and say, look, we're here now. When are you going to be in? We need to pop back. We've got some documents for you. We need to hand them over to you. Again, if we've got emails, we'll send an email. We'll basically do whatever we can. If no one answers the door, and we haven't got a phone number, or we have got a phone number and they don't answer, we'll leave a note for them. Sometimes it's just a handwritten note. Sometimes we get like a card printed, and it just goes through the letterbox. Hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm working for Legal Connect. I've got some legal documents for you. I've knocked on your door to see if you're here. You weren't available. If you could please give me a call or give me an email, or go to our website and fill in the form and just let us know when you're going to be around, and we can arrange a time to come back and hand these over to you. So that's what we would do. If we don't hear from them, we just go back for a second visit and we do it again. We go through exactly the same process. Knock on the door, they don't answer. If we've got the number, we'll call them. Leave a voicemail if we can. We'll leave a note. If we've got an email, we'll email them. We repeat the process. Usually we do 3 visits, and depending upon certain circumstances, we'll communicate with the client whilst this is going on. Some process serving is just dead easy. Some is an absolute nightmare. Everyone is different. But we just do the same thing again. Now, if at the end of our 3 visits, we know the location is where the subject is, we've called them and we've left messages, and we could always show phone data if we needed to that phone number was called. We'd always, if we had their email, we've got a trace of the email. If we leave a note, we will evidence that, which I'll come to in a moment. If we've done all of those things and we say to call our lawyer and go, look, we've done all those things, we know the person's there, are you happy for us just to letterbox this, do one last attempt, and if they're not in on visit 3, we'll put it through the door, or we'll sellotape it to the front door, depending upon certain circumstances. We leave the papers. That is therefore effective service. That there are nuances, of course, relative to certain cases, but as a general principle, that is the way it works. And again, we can demonstrate. We would put the documents together that show how many visits we've done, when we've contacted them, how we've contacted them, what stuff we've left for them, and we evidence all of that. So it is irrefutable, and there is no ambiguity whatsoever. And there's a particular case, which I'll talk about in a moment, where the person denied it. I'm not Mr. Smith. I don't know what you're talking about. Where we then took extra steps to prove that he was Mr. Smith, which we'll come to. Usually, though, a lot of the time, it's just that. This is the process. You knock on the door, they answer it, they identify themselves, whether they're hostile or they're not hostile, we know it's them, we give them the paperwork. And usually what the process server will do, the process server, of course, isn't a lawyer. What they will normally do is say, look, hi, I'm so-and-so, I work for Legal Connect. I've got these legal documents for you. I'm not a lawyer, but you may want to seek legal advice on this if you're not aware of this, or you can contact the Citizens Advice Bureau, et cetera, just, and also there's an element from a process server's point of view of needing sometimes to de-escalate scenarios, because there are instances where, the people being served, it's not a good day for them when a process server turns up with legal papers. So, and there have been some cases of process servers, getting assaulted and stuff. So there is a certain delicacy sometimes to doing it, but most of the time it happens just like this. And again, it's effective service. We've been to the place, we know that's where they are. They've validated their ID. We've left the papers, and we can evidence it. So here's some examples. So obviously the red bits are redacted, so that you're not seeing any details. But this was actually very recent. This is a particular job where one of our guys had to find this particular address. We located the address. On the picture on the left is the door right at the very top of the staircase. They went up there, knocked on the door, didn't have any response. They put a handwritten note, which is obviously redacted in red, and there's no letterbox there, so they just shoved it in the door, and they left it. We knew that this is where the subject lived. The client had given us this address. We'd also, tracing is something I'll talk about a little bit later on, but we'd also done a trace to validate this is where the person is. So they went and they did that. The second time they went back, the subject was there, knocked on the door. Gentleman opened the door. The agent explained who they were, what they were doing, and said they had papers for someone of this name. We believe you to be that name. And they said, yeah, that's me. He said, well, have you got any ID just to make sure? And the individual, very nice actually, got out his driving license, which we had a copy of anyway to validate it was him via the lawyer. So we could identify this. So it's unlikely, given this guy's willingness, that he'd have had a problem later on at court and denied that it had ever happened because he was compliant as part of this process. But from our point of view, we would be able to demonstrate, if he denies he's heard anything about it, we would be able to demonstrate using the photographs as well as the documents that the server would provide that effective service has occurred. Got the right location, identified the subject, subject's compliant, subject tells us who they are, shows us who they are, they've got the papers. There's no way that they can deny that. This is one, actually I did this one, again, redacted certain parts of it, where this was a tricky one, and there were warnings given to us in terms of the individual that I had the pleasure of possibly meeting. They actually never answered the door, but I went to the particular location, took a picture. I wrote a note which I put inside that envelope, strictly confidential. They didn't answer the door, so I put that through the letterbox. And also, just as being a bit of a control freak, of course, I took a screenshot on my mobile phone of where I was parked. So those red bits are redacting the names of the street names. But of course, that would identify if there was ever any ambiguity where the street was and where I was. Also, I've got a time on it. And it's got the postcode at the bottom. So it's just more evidence. It's just belt and braces from my point of view. Second time I went during the evening. So the photo on the right, parked right outside the door. Took a photo of it again to validate I was there. I wrote a little note that said, hi, here I am. You know, I'm going to try you again. Can you drop me an email? Can you give me a call? Can you go to the website? Need to arrange you to get these documents. Thanks very much. Put it through the letterbox. Nothing happened. Then we get to the third one again, parked outside, wrote another note, same details, put it through the letterbox. Nothing happened. But when I put the documentation together to give to the client, I can evidence all of this in intricate detail so that there's no ambiguity and there's no way on earth that they can possibly have a problem with it. And actually, in this instance, I believe the subject there did turn up in court. So even though they never responded to me and they never answered the door, which I was actually a bit grateful for, because on this particular occasion, some of the documents was a witness statement, and it was grim reading. And I was pretty apprehensive about it, to be quite honest. So we do have to take these things into consideration. In fact, funnily enough, we've got one at the moment where we sometimes have to deliver documents to prisoners. And a firm has got in touch because documents have got to be served on a particular individual who's a bit of a nasty piece of work, apparently. And lots of process serving agencies have turned it down. And I said, well, send it to us and we'll have a look at it and we'll come back to you. But the point I made earlier about the validation of the subject, the interesting story was that we had a guy of ours that went to deliver at a particular location. Door was opened. The person that answered the door wasn't the subject, but they called the subject on the phone. And then all of a sudden they didn't know who the subject was. And now you've got the wrong address, blah, 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 blah. Our guy left a note and the note came back to us. And the subject, Saul, got this note and called us and said, I don't know, who you are. I'm not so-and-so, I'm somebody else. And this is harassment and you're harassing me. I don't know what this is about. Da, 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 da. But of course, because he called us, his mobile number came up on our system, and we as investigators were then able to trace the phone number to him. So he'd called us on a number that wasn't withheld, so we could validate. Well, we knew he lived there. We're pretty sure the bloke we spoke to called him and then denied anything about it. And then he called us from his own mobile number, claiming to be somebody else. Well, that was just part of the evidence bundle to say, yeah, we've served him, and this is what he did. So just to clarify, and this is the most important thing, this is where lawyers are at risk if it doesn't happen. That is what is effective service. Well, it's conducted by an independent third party, and they followed the correct process. The process server is liable if they lie or they don't do it properly or they act with bad faith. They are liable, and it's a huge risk. So they have to make sure that it's done properly. I mentioned the moral arguments previously. Either side, we do have a duty of care, regardless of what the case is, to make sure that it's done properly. And for you guys, as from a legal aspect, there's risk, because if it isn't done properly, you can turn up in court, the other person not know it's happened. It's embarrassing. It will cost you money. It's stress. You've got to try and get that from the service. If you've not done it properly, it can just be a nightmare. Therefore, belt and braces needs to be done properly. Usually the evidence that the process server would provide will be one of these certificate server witness statement affidavit relative to the type of document that's being served. And along with that, there will be extra. So those pictures, for example, we just put an evidence bundle together that says this is what we did, and that's handed over. When it comes to how you instruct a process server, I mean, there's lots of ways of doing it. One is that you can do a Google search. There'll be process servers that turn up all over the place. There are certain associations. I'll talk more about that in the talk I'm doing on October the 9th, because there's a lot of issues often there. When I first got involved in this, as I said at the beginning, I found it a really archaic industry. I couldn't believe that process serving, there were people that needed to send you a letter. It'd be quicker if you sent a pigeon. It's just totally bonkers. So part of what we wanted to do as a litigation support agency was to increase efficiency, lower costs, increase security, have everything in one place. I mean, there were multiple problems of a lawyer contacting an agency contacting a process server contacting the subject going back, and it was like, this is the night. This is totally inefficient. We need to sort this out. So one of the things that we came up with, one way that you can do it if you want to use us, there's lots of other agencies out there obviously, but if you want to use us, clients can call us, they can drop us an email, but there's a really easy, quick way of doing it. And that is that you just go to our website. And if I just show you this very quickly. So if you go to our website, it tells you all about us and what we do. You click on a button called platform, takes you to our platform. You register, which is free. There's no cost. We don't charge for any of this software. It's built into the serve. It takes 30 seconds to register. This has two-factor authentication. It has other security measures in place. When you log in, once you put your details up there and we know who you are, and we have to validate that it is a lawyer because we only work with lawyers, you then come through to a page like this. So this is our portal. We offer a wide range of services: process serving, tracing, genealogy. We do a lot of other things as well, but we're going to start building onto this platform. But if you needed a process server, what you'll do is click on process server, and then you've got a choice. Do I want to serve documents in the UK, in the EU, or outside of Europe? You click on it, you put in, this is our test account, you put in a new instruction, you fill it in, you upload, if you've got a photograph of the subject or anything like that, you add some documents, you fill all this in, and then you confirm the instruction, and that's it. And what will then happen is that it comes through to us, we get it done, and then once it's done, we upload all the documents the other end. So you'll get a notification saying, dear Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, please log into your account. The documents have been served. So for us, it's a secure process because of the onboarding and the two-factor authentication. We've got an audit trail. Your profile here will show you exactly what steps have been taken at what day, at what time. So it's all in one place. And it's developing all the time. We're actually at the point now where this is becoming a little bit, dare I say, like Uber. So we have certain geographical postcodes where if you type in that postcode, you will be connected straight to a particular agent who does it straight away, and it's all done that way. So that's all you do. It is really, really simple. How do I go? Oh, yeah, put this back on. So that's how it works. And then we invoice you after, although we are building in a payment system, which is another. Okay, recording back in progress. So in terms of responsibilities, then, this is sometimes where problems occur. So the responsibilities for you as the legal professional is to ensure that we've got the correct details. And we've had this before where we get given the details, we go and do the serve, and then they come back and go, oh, we've got the wrong address. Well, sorry, there's nothing we can do. We've had an agent go out and do it. So we need the correct subject details. The details need to be correct on the paperwork. We have had it where we've gone and served, and then they've said, oh, we've made a mistake. Well, sorry, we'll have to recharge you then because it's another visit. And you need to give us everything that needs to be served. If you give us half and we go and do it, and then they go, oh, we need to add that, we have to charge again. So they're your responsibilities. Our responsibilities is that we ensure effective service. Secondly, is that it's documented properly and that we provide you with the correct paperwork. That is the core sort of value that we offer as the independent third party that's handling process serving. We do it properly, we document it properly, and we give you the paperwork, and that's all put together. In terms of what documents can be served, well, in reality, any documents can be served. I mean, usually, you know, there's a core list of things that we see all the time, non-mol, etc., etc. But really, in theory, if there's ever doubt as to the person rejecting some sort of paperwork, we can serve it. Also, to be you know, ethical and to be the sales prevention officer for Legal Connect, if you don't always need to use a process server. If the subject on the other side has a lawyer, you can send it to the lawyer. And if that other lawyer accepts it on behalf of their client, then you don't, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to pass that over to a process server for a fee. Usually you can just do it that way. So you don't always need to use a process server. In terms of cost for us, and again, there's other agencies out there, we just charge a flat fee of £99 plus VAT. And we do that try and do it within between 5 and 10 working days. If it's urgent, and we will build this into the platform, and someone calls us and said, look, we've got to get this out today or tomorrow, we will do everything in our power to do that. It may just be that we have to put off other work and there'll be a bespoke charge for that. But again, that's all sort of discussed beforehand. When it comes to other places, it depends. I mean, we've served documents all over the world. What we normally do in that instance is that we get the details from the client. So we had one recently for Bahrain. Do you know? And in Bahrain, it's like, well, actually we do. So in that instance, we went to that agent and we arranged that, and it was done, but it was a bespoke one-off fee. So if it's unique like that, the platform, it comes through to us, and then we come back to you with the details. The commonly asked questions, I'm trying to be conscious of time here. What happens if you don't know the subject's address? Well, there's a few things there. One is that if you know where they work, you can serve someone at work. You have to, the service still has to validate and identify they've met the subject. We still have to go through that process. But the best solution for that is to do a trace, which we'll look at in a moment. And a trace is where we will do various things to confirm where that subject is, which again, it shows you that process of you guys on behalf of your client, through instructing us, or the agency has done everything in their power to ensure that the right person has been served in the right location. We know they're there, and we can document that. What happens if the subject refuses the papers, which happens quite often, or they're not in, or they're not who they say they are? In simple terms, tough. They can't avoid it. If the person has been identified, and everything has been done to validate where that person is, there's nothing there's nothing they can do. They're part of that process. In terms of where papers can't be served, and this is quite interesting, it's very rare, but it does happen. In fact, there's a high profile case not that long ago. So the first is a place of worship. You are not allowed to go in and serve in a church or a mosque or wherever. So it may well be, you know, if it's a vicar or something, we just find where they live and we'll do it there. Or it may well be that we call and we speak to the vicar and say, you know, we can't come onto the premises. Can we meet you at this location at this time, etc., etc., demonstrating that we have done everything that we possibly can to ensure we've got the right person and we've done it properly. The other one is a royal palace. Now, what's quite interesting about the royal palace was, of course, Prince Andrew had to be served papers in the last couple of years because of was a Virginia Giuffre, linked to the Epstein issues. And I believe you can't go into the palace, but I believe that it was served at the gates. So all post goes through the gates. And I believe that's where it was done because they couldn't go inside and do it. And the other one is Parliament. So again, if it was a politician, then of course you could go to their constituency office or find where they lived, or do it that way. But in theory, they're the three places you can't do it. Just a bit of sort of added value here, just in terms of you guys. So the other sort of being part of litigation support, the investigation side. We're also involved in security. We do a lot of security work for companies, and we've seen something that's happened in the security domain that happens with process serving, which we think is something that you guys should be aware of. And that is that quite often when documents are served, there is a threat spike. So we've had it where we've been looking after corporate clients who are in dispute with employees, and in some cases, some really nasty stuff. And working alongside the lawyers, we've said, we need to know when you're doing stuff. Because if they get a phone call from their lawyer, or if you deliver letters and they are volatile and aggressive and all the rest of it, that represents a threat to our client, be it the people, the location, whatever it may be. And we want to be able to mitigate that. So one thing that I would suggest you do is that you make your clients aware when documents are going to be served. If there's reason to believe that the subject is hostile or aggressive, or there's anything like that, I would give the subject a heads up, because there's a potential likelihood for, when emotion is high, intelligence is low, and we've seen the pattern happen before, the possibility that it triggers them and they kick off. So good practice of just good sort of, and also for yourself, if they ever have a problem with you being the lawyers, again, you just need to be aware of that when things like this happen, it can be a trigger for heightened hostility. So it's just something to be aware of. We do run a personal safety course, actually. I'll have a word with David at DG, so we can always show you some of the things that we do to try and mitigate that. So just as we're getting towards the end, and I'm conscious I want to finish at 10:02, so there's questions. So tracing is linked to this, because sometimes when papers need to be served, they don't know where to serve them. So what is tracing? Well, it's official verification of a subject's location. How's it done? There's various databases. The amateurs, and it's an unlicensed, unregulated industry, will probably just go on Google and try and find, was it 118? Can't remember, something like that. They're out of date. That it's not very good. It won't be up to date. There are private databases that are used. Lawyers can use them, but investigators and tracing agents will have access to them under certain conditions, where they can therefore do a trace of the subject. Those sorts of databases are often aggregators of other data. So they will bring together various other sources. And there are certain organizations, in fact, there's one that we use, where if we get stuck, we know that they have access to particular databases that even we can't get to, just to further validate the process. You can sometimes, it's quite rare, but it's happened with us. You sometimes need to validate the location. Sometimes that's done through surveillance. very basic low-level surveillance. Sometimes it's through sending someone around to knock on the door. So sometimes boots on the ground can be required, but usually 9 times out of 10, it isn't. It's an online search. Why is it necessary? Well, because you've got to validate you've got the right address. If you do the correct process, but you're delivering an address they moved out of 2 years ago, it's not effective service. And that person, I'm assuming, on the other side would demonstrate, well, hang on, I don't live there, been living there. I'm on the electoral roll, I'm paying my council tax, and all those things. So that's why it's important. Who can conduct a trace? Well, you guys can conduct a trace if you know how to do it, or you can come to people like us, tracing agents, where we will do it for you. And as I showed you in the platform, you just click on a button, you fill it in, and it comes through to us, and we do it. We don't work, so you know where to go. We don't work with private clients because of GDPR and risk issues. So that's why we validate that the people that come on our platform are lawyers. But for you guys, all you need to do is log on for free, stick the details in, and send it off. From a GDPR point of view, what's interesting about the sort of investigation industry, which this falls into, is that as far as I'm aware, it's the only industry that will gather someone's personal data without that person's consent, as far as I'm aware, which makes it quite unique. So there are, outside of standard GDPR considerations, we feel we have to go further than that because the person that we're searching hasn't given us their permission. So one of them is that we have a legitimate interest test, which is why we work with lawyers, because if a lawyer gets in touch and says, well, I need divorce papers, I'm acting on behalf of this client, we need divorce papers serving, and they provide that to us, well, that ticks the box. It's about a legal process, and these details are being shared with the lawyer. We're not sharing them with their client. If whatever the lawyer does beyond that is outside of our control. So we know that from a legitimate interest, then the boxes are ticked because we're working with you guys. The personal data that we hold, of course, is just relative to the case. We'll hold it for 5 years. If we get a subject access request, which we've never had, touch wood, but if we did, we're prepared for that. Everything is held in a pretty basic way. The data that we've got is all via the system and then stored offline. So again, there's no sort of paper trail in the actual paper trail sense. The digital stuff is all stored. Legal aid, this is quite misunderstood. The primary issue with legal aid is the billing of it. So what we normally do, if a client gets in touch and says, do you do legal aid? We say we do, but we never quite know how much work we're going to do. So this is how we're going to bill for it, and we're going to do it at the legal aid rates. We just demonstrate in our billing to you the time taken to do it. So it's just a slightly different invoicing structure, because we have to match the work to the designated fees rather than just if it were a private client. So that, other than that, there's no difference at all. You just need to tell us it's a legal aid job so that we can make sure that the paperwork is appropriate for you. I'm aware that I'm 4 minutes off the end, so just very, very quickly. We as an agency want to work with lawyers. We're trying to be the cutting edge of everything that is litigation support. We are constantly developing our platform to have new services on there. You saw genealogy on there. We do lots of other things, but lawyers can get in touch with us for free. There's no consultation fee or anything like that. So you can call, you go through DG Legal if that's what DG Legal want, but in theory, you can contact us anytime about any queries. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get back to you straight away. We're kind of here to support you guys. So we're always around if you need anything from us. So some of the other stuff that sometimes is linked to process serving, things like asset reports. So if there's a debt matter and the subject is being pursued for a particular amount of money, one thing that we can do is look at their financial position. Now, there are limitations on what can be done. It's not quite how you sort of see it on TV, but there are certain steps that can be taken, legitimately above board, that can be used in court, that says we believe this person has this amount of assets or this amount of cash or this, that, and the other, or indicators of what their financial position may be. So things like that will be added to the platform. But in principle, if there's any queries about anything, you can just get in touch. And if we can help, we will do. And just the final thing, as I'm on 47 minutes, if anybody wants a certificate for today's attendance, then either go through David or contact myself, and we'll get that filled in and get that over to you. But otherwise, I think that is my presentation. So I hope, obviously there's some questions we're going to go through. I hope that's been of value and has been of help. And as I said, get in touch if you've got any queries later down the line. But otherwise, I'll hand back to you, David. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. No, I thought that was really informative. I watched most of it, but not all of it. Greg, there's something else going on. So apologies if you've answered any of the questions so far. One of my failures is I didn't tell you, Greg, that we don't issue CPD certificates for free webinars.
Okay.
If you want to, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
The other point to pick up on is, in terms of further queries, absolutely no need to go through DG Legal. That will just cause delay. So please go directly to Greg if that's okay.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
And okay, despite my message at the beginning of the webinar saying please use the Q&A, most people have used the webinar chat, which it's fine. I don't mind. But let's prioritize the Q&A because that's what I said I would do. So I apologize if you've answered this query before, but the first query from Madeleine is, why is it necessary for process servers to read what is being served on a subject, such as the witness statement? Private information is usually contained in statements and not for the person nor a party to a claim to read.
Yeah, good point. The reason, I mean, I don't know if it's the standard operating procedures for everybody, but for us, it's about knowing the hostility potentially of the person that we're going to be knocking on the door. If there's reason to suspect that this person is violent or aggressive or anything like that, it gives us a heads up. I mean, we're always going to try and be polite and charming and all the rest of it, but you can't guarantee that the person that you're dealing with. In fact, actually, that particular case that I was referring to in there was a link to drugs. And we're like, I need to know exactly what is going on. And in fact, in that instance, there was even safety protocols put in place beyond what we would normally do. So it's not necessarily from the perspective of, trying to breach personal data or do anything like that. It was more from we just need to know what we're getting involved in here. And we've got it anyway, so it's been sent to us anyway, so it's in our possession. Does that answer your question?
Well, that's for Madeleine to respond. So have you ever actually been physically assaulted, Greg?
Look, what I do in my private life has got nothing to do with this. I personally haven't, but I know process servers that have. It is a motive. There are instances. That particular job that I referred to there, I've got to be honest. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning about working, and I testified in Malta in a high-profile case where certain witnesses didn't go. I was far more terrified knocking on that door than I was going and doing that job because of the nature around it. So I haven't had it, but a lot of process servers have. And just general hostility, even though you're an independent and you're not part of the process, you're just there handing over a piece of paper. The other person is not always going to be that friendly about it. And even in the instance, funnily enough, that example I talked about when somebody called us to say, oh, no, it's not me. And it's like, well, I've got your number, so obviously it is you. That person, the person that was at the door that had answered the first time was really difficult with our server. So it's not always very pleasant. And there are certain agencies that will are quite open to delivering in some pretty nasty scenarios. So it's just I haven't been assaulted, not yet, touch wood, but it's just duty of care. You've got a duty of care to the guys that work for you, and if it's in my area and I go and do it, then we just got to be careful. It's a risk.
Okay, got you. You asked if you'd answered Madeline's question, and she has come back saying that is down to the instructing solicitor to tell you. I don't believe you're entitled to read the witness statement.
Oh, okay. Well, that's quite interesting. I think in that, I can't remember what happened in that particular case, but I would have an argument that there is a duty of care if anybody that's working with me is going into a situation where there's hostility, then we need to know that. So I think that's quite fair enough. That's a good point. I mean, Madeline, drop me an email and we'll have a chat about it. But I feel I would want to do everything within my power to make sure that my guys know everything they need to know before they do anything.
Well, was the next one on the Q&A. We will come to the chat because most people have used the chat rather than the Q&A, but I'm prioritizing the Q&A. So Shabana has said, well, and this is a good point, it would make sense to have a prompt in the instructions form of any known risk instead of the docs being read. I suppose that's an alternative, isn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, I tell you what's really quite interesting about that is that I really welcome that criticism, because what we're trying to do outside of just being a good litigation support agency is that we are trying to be the cutting edge at everything we do, and any feedback we get from a solicitor, we will act on it. So what that tells me is that as part of the uploading process of documents, we should add that in. Maybe that also ticks a box for Madeline as well, that we can put in there a system that says, are there any known threats here for us to be aware of from this particular subject, so that we can bypass that, and secondly, then it's automated and it's logged. So yeah, and you know what, as part of the sort of the development of what we do, we exist to support lawyers. So if we can do things better, tell us and we'll make those changes and we'll make sure it's in place. So thank you.
Okay. Now, we've got several people asking the same question, which is, can you send the CPD certificate?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
So I think what we should do here is that rather than you have to work through like 120 different people, which is just not feasible, those that want a CPD certificate, could you please contact Greg? His contact details were in the previous slide. We are going to send you the slides tomorrow, so you will have his contact details. So if you could do that, that would work better than him having to work through 128 people, I think. So yeah, please do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of stamps, isn't it?
It's a lot. Well, it's not just that, but there's a misunderstanding about CPD. The rule for keeping CPD certificates finished 9 years ago. So for the last 9 years, they've not been necessary. You just have a record of your training. So it's a bit of a myth that you need the certificates, but some people still like them, which is fine. But they're not really necessary. That's why we're not that keen on doing them ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's just have a look if there's anything else in the Q&A. I don't think so. Let's have a look at the chat. How long is the turnover from instructions to service, i.e. if an urgent service is needed in 24 hours, can this be done via your portal?
Yeah, good point. So usually, if at the moment in the portal, it doesn't have the option for urgent service. So what would happen with our existing clients is that they've got my mobile and they've got the office number and our contact details. Get in touch and tell us what the issue is, and we'll move heaven and earth to try and do it for you. Obviously, we may not be able to do it if it's like, it's got to be done by 4 o'clock today. We may not be able to do it, but we will do everything we can. What we are going to build into the portal is that facility. And so the easiest thing to do is just to get in touch, because we'll try and do it, but we can't always guarantee it. And it also is depending, if it's in like the Outer Hebrides and it's got to be done by 4 o'clock, there will be limitations, but we'll do everything we can to try and facilitate that for you. But eventually that will be part of the platform.
Okay, next one. Any thoughts on serving on a party who's in protective shelter accommodation by the council for alleged domestic abuse, please? Unknown address. Thank you.
Oh, that's interesting. I think in that instance, if they're unsheltered, then there must be a way. I've never come across that. My instinct would be there must be a way through the council of ensuring if that person's in council care, there must be a way that they have comms and access to them. So there's probably a way of finding them that way. One thing that we could do there in that instance would be to do a trace on the people working at the council in particular departments, and then find out who's in charge of what particular department and get in touch with them and say, we've got these documents for someone. Who is it there that we can get these to you? And you could do it that way. That off the top of my head, that's what I would think. But I can always, if you want to email that question to me, I'll have a chat to some of the other guys and see if they've come across that, but I haven't. But that's what I would do. Trace who's in the council and then contact the council.
Another question here, is there a prompt to highlight any known risk in the online form?
There isn't, but I think we mentioned it a few moments ago, which was because that had come up, Madeline's question, and then the other question that followed that, we will, off the back of this, I'll be emailing my developer and saying, can you add this in? Because if that's a really good solution and a really good suggestion. And that's also why when we started, we were just a normal agency and it was rubbish. I hated it. It was labor intensive. It was just ridiculous. So we went to our clients and said, we're going to do this. Tell us how you want it. And we started building things around that. And we now go back to our clients and go, now you're using the platform. What else are we missing? Because if we're not doing it, we're not serving your needs. So I will be emailing the developer today and saying, with all process serving, regardless of where it is, we need to add in a form that allows the lawyer to tell us if there's a risk and what that risk is, because we don't have that at the moment. So yes, there will be. And also, sorry, on a very selfish note, if anyone's got any queries or ideas about how we improve this, please tell us, because we're ultimately here to serve you and we want to make your life as easy as possible. So if you've got any ideas on what we can do, tell me and we will act on it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Greg, you've answered all of the questions in the Q&A and the chat, and you've delivered a very good presentation. So thank you very much for that. There are just a couple of points that I would like to make, which is you will receive an email asking you to rate the webinar out of 5 stars. So if you've enjoyed it, please do leave feedback and any suggestions for future topics. Our next webinar is using private investigators. And guess who's presenting that?
Actually, do you know what? Just on that note, I am so looking forward to doing that, because I think the private investigation industry is the most misunderstood and bizarre industry. And I've already written the workshop, and I hope it will be incredibly insightful and helpful to you. On what to learn, but also on the things to avoid. So hopefully I'll see you all there.
And that's taking place on Thursday, the 9th of October, again at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We always enjoy doing these free webinars. Have a look at our other webinars as well. With the paid for webinars, which are a little bit longer, a little bit more detailed, they are priced at about a third of the market price, so they're very budget friendly. So I wish everybody a pleasant afternoon, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.